Hey, it's Coach Reeves again, and today I'm going to show you how to find the inverse of a function. First example, I have g of x equals a negative 4x plus 5. Whenever we see g of x, if I see f of x, we're going to treat that as the letter y. We've done that in the past, but just a refresher. So this is going to be our y. Our first step, if you remember from our prior lesson, when we find the inverse, I asked you to switch places with the x and the y value. Here, I'm going to ask you to switch places with the y and the x. So we're going to switch these, and this is now going to read x equals a negative 4y plus 5. All I did was I switched places with the x and the y. Okay, step one is switch places with the x, y. Step two is we want to solve for the letter y. We want to get y by itself. So we want to get the y by itself, so we're going to move the 5 to the other side. We're going to go minus 5, minus 5. That will cancel. That will leave us with x minus 5 equals a negative 4y. Now, I'm a little bit different, but there's going to be situations where we're going to have to graph this. Not on the first few problems, we're not going to have to graph. We're just going to find the inverse. But when I have to graph, I'm going to go ahead and put the 1. We don't need the 1, but in a few minutes, when we have to graph, you're going to need it when we find slope, because slope is always a fraction. Okay? Next step. We want to get y by itself. To get y by itself, we're going to divide by negative 4. But we're going to divide everyone. Every step, everybody gets divided by negative 4. This will cancel. That's going to leave me with y equals a negative 1/4. You see this? 1 divided by negative 4. That's going to be negative 1/4 x. A negative divided by a negative is a positive 5/4. This is how you would solve this problem. Good? This is the inverse. Instead of y, you may see it written like this. You may see it written as the inverse of g of x equals negative 1/4 x plus 5/4. These mean the same thing, but this means I have found the inverse. This is the inverse of my original function. Okay? Good. All right, let's go to another example. If I have this problem, I do not want you to panic and say, oh, wait, there's no x's, there's no y's. Here, this was f of x. We said we were going to treat this as a y, and that would be our x. In this case, if I have f of n, we're still going to treat this as our y value, and this will be our x value. So don't panic. Just treat this as your y, this is your x. What is your first step to do? Switch places with the x and the y. So we're going to write this as x equals a negative 1/6 y, we switch places, that's a y, plus 11/6. Now, a lot of us have a phobia or we're not comfortable dealing with fractions, so my suggestion is get rid of the fractions as soon as possible. And in this situation, to get rid of the fractions, you multiply every term by the common denominator. In this case, both of these are 6's, so the common denominator is 6. So we're going to multiply each term times the denominator, the common denominator. So times 6 times 6 times 6. 6 times x will give us a 6x. Here, the 6's will cancel. These 6's will cancel, and that'll leave us with a negative 1y. Here, the 6's will cancel, and that will leave us with a plus 11. We want to get our y by itself. Remember, we're trying to solve for y. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the 11 to the other side. We're going to go minus 11, minus 11. That gives us 6x minus 11 equals a negative 1y. We're close, but y is not by itself. So we're going to divide everyone. We're going to divide everybody by negative 1. This will cancel. Final answer. Y equals 6 divided by negative 1. That's going to give me a negative 6x. Negative 11 divided by negative 1. The negatives cancel, and you're left with a positive 11. That will be your final answer. That is the inverse function. Okay? Let's do a couple more examples. Give myself some room. Here, remember this is our y, so we're going to switch places with the x and the y. We're going to write this as x equals 10 minus 5y over 2. I don't know if you remember your stuff in geometry or your stuff in Algebra 1, but if I wanted to get rid of a 2 that's in the denominator, I would multiply by that. So in this case, to get rid of the 2 that's in the bottom, in the denominator, I'm going to multiply times 2. And whatever I do to the right side, I have to do to the left side. This will cancel. 2 times x is 2x. That cancels, so you're looking at 10 minus 5y. We want to move the 10 to the other side. We're going to go minus 10, minus 10. I will get 2x minus 10 equals negative 5y. All right, so you understand, we're trying to isolate, we're trying to get y by itself, so we move the 10 to the other side. Almost done. We're going to divide by negative 5. To get the y by itself, we're going to divide by negative 5. We're going to divide each term. Everybody gets divided by negative 5. This will cancel. That will leave me with y equals 2 divided by negative 5. It does not reduce, so this will be a negative 2/5 x. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 10 divided by 5 is 2. That will be your inverse of the function. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. Okay? One more example. Let's read the directions. They're going to ask us to find the inverse. Then graph the function and its inverse. There's 3 parts. Find the inverse, graph the original function, and then graph the inverse. We're going to start out, I'm going to ask you to graph the original function. If we're going to graph the original function, I'm going to ask you to start with the y-intercept. So we're going to start, we're going to put a dot right here at the y-intercept at 4. Our slope says to go down 4 to the right 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right 1. We would draw a line connecting the dots. Whoop, kind of missed a little bit. Let's see if I can do a better job. Okay. That's about as good as it's going to get for me. Now we're going to find the inverse. This is our y, remember? So step one is to swap places, switch the x and the y. So we're going to write this as x equals negative 4y plus 4. Do you remember what I said? I said that I was going to put a 1 there because we're going to graph. I said we're going to put a 1 here because you're going to need it later for slope. You got to find slope. Okay? So we're going to move the 4 to the other side. We're going to go minus 4, minus 4. That will leave us with x, or 1x, minus 4 equals negative 4y. Almost done. We need to get the negative 4 away from the y. To do that, we're going to divide by negative 4. Each term gets divided by a negative 4. This will cancel, and this will leave us with y equals 1 divided by negative 4. That's going to leave us at the negative 1/4 x. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to be a positive 1. So we have graphed the original function. We have just found the inverse. And now we ask you to graph the inverse. So we're going to come over here and we're going to start with the y-intercept at a positive 1. And then the slope says to go down 1 to the right 4. Down 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or we could go up 1 to the left 4. If we connect our dots, it would look like this. We would be done. But let me just show you something while you understand what's going on and see if you remember the last lesson. If I was to graph y equals x, in our last worksheet we talked about that the inverse is a reflection over this equation or function. So if I was to graph that, you could see that this would fold over and match. This line would match up to this line would match up to that. We would fold over and match up perfectly. I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm just giving you a visual to show you that we have found the inverse, and the inverse is a reflection over that line. Okay? All right, so your assignment is do the rest of the problems on the worksheet. Actually, no, I'm going to make it easy because I'm going to take it nice on you. I'm going to ask you to do all the evens, only the evens on the worksheet. I've done about 4 odds, so you only have to do the evens. If you have any questions, please email us. Let us know your concerns. Save your concerns to the Zoom or whatever, but contact us if you get stuck. Good luck.